Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us.
This is a official review of the WWE Icons Rob Van Dam documentary series. As a fan of RVD, this is a very good documentary. I do recommend people who are a fan of not only wrestling but of RVD, the wrestler himself. I do recommend you checking this out. It covers a lot of ground from when he was young and how he really got himself into the business and into just wrestling in general, and how his passion for wrestling kind of took over more than the other stuff that he was able to do as a young child, like, you know, playing sports. And I think I think he did track and some other stuff. And you know martial arts took an effect on his career also. But before he even got into martial arts, they, you know, his family members and stuff in the documentary said that Rob was always a very smart kid, but he just didn't like being told what to do, or some type of authority, you know, which, you know, a lot of people are like that. You know, that's perfectly fine. But, you know, for him, he couldn't really stick with any type of organized sports. So in the beginning for him, in the beginning of the docu-series, that's what they cover over. And then as he gravitates towards wrestling, you see how much he enjoys watching wrestling back then. I think in the 80s, early 80s, I guess. He gets it. Rob tries to find a way to get into a wrestling school, but he really can't get anything in his area at the time, where he grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan. That's the first thing I kind of should have said, but yeah. So he's from Battle Creek, Michigan, and at the time, I don't think there was any wrestling schools in his area. So they said that there was a guy that lived in his area, and they would drive by his neighborhood, and he would have a ring, and they always wanted to, you know, train wrestling there. But the guy would only do kickboxing. That ring was for kickboxing only. And Rob was able to do a lot of his early training and skills of learning the tricks and trades of wrestling and shit like that there, only if he was able to learn kickboxing. So that's where the martial arts and kickboxing was intertwined with his career. Just from learning that, he was able to get himself in a position of where he could also learn wrestling. So throughout the day, the kickboxers and stuff would be inside of that ring, and then when they were gone and stuff like that, that's when him and his buddies would learn how to wrestle. So as he gets older, they cover a little bit of his career in WCW, which is a brief stint, you know, but he was just still young, still trying to find his niche. And I forget how. I don't know if it was in WCW. I could be wrong about that. But I believe they said in WCW he came up with his name Rob Van Dam, and I should have known this, but I probably because I'm a lot younger than Rob Van Dam. I didn't grow up on John Claude Van Damme, who's a very like well-known action movie martial artist type guy in the 80s. So John Claude Van Damme inspired RVD to make Rob Van Dam. So Rob Van Dam kind of like had that as his gimmick. You know, he would come out, and if you ever seen any of the Blood, I think it's Bloodsport movies or something like that. It's a fighting movie, a martial arts type movie. If you ever seen one of those, then you kind of see what he was going for back then at the time with that type of gimmick. So he did that for a little bit, and then this is when his ECW career kind of took a hold of itself, because he started to train with Sabu. That's something I almost missed, which is very, very important. He started to train with Sabu because he was able to find a wrestling school 40 minutes away from his hometown. So he found a wrestling school 40 minutes away, and he started training with Sabu. Sabu told him about ECW, and Rob Van Dam came over, went to ECW, and this is also after WCW, so I'm in the right timeline. So finished WCW, went to ECW, and that's kind of where his career went up. You know, once Paul Heyman seen him in ECW, even within his first match, he got a lot of fan support. And back then, you know, you just seeing the crowd and seeing how anxious and extremely passionate everybody was for ECW at the time. Like, it's a make or break situation for certain wrestlers. You go there and be a no name and not get that type of reaction that you think you're gonna receive, because it was a tough crowd back then. But Rob Van Dam, you know, RVD's abilities, he knew that he would get the type of reaction that he wanted from the fans, which was very organic, because he worked harder than anybody in the back. You know, tried to work harder than anybody in the back and put on the best match he could. So that I could say he did, and it was a success. And Paul Heyman knew that he needed to sign Rob Van Dam to a really good contract. So this is around the early times of ECW, and Rob ends up becoming the television champion. Beats Bam Bam Bigelow. I probably might go back and watch that match too, if it's on it's not even on, I can't even say the network. I'm so used to saying the network. It's Peacock now. But Rob ends up beating Bam Bam Bigelow for the ECW Television Championship, and he's held that, at the time, he held the ECW Television Championship for about 2 years. And within the time frame of him holding it in 2 years, he got into a match with Rhino, and he broke his ankle, I believe. Yeah, he broke his ankle, so he had to relinquish the title, unfortunately. And within the time frame that Rob was out, ECW was starting to file into bankruptcy. And even before that, though, Rob was already kind of a face on WWE or WWF at the time, because Rob was able to kind of get himself in both brands at the time, because Vince was working with Paul Heyman, and they had a couple of ECW guys over there. So before the injury ever happened to Rob, he was somewhat of a familiar face from ECW to WWF. So people knew who Rob was at the time. So him having to relinquish the title and his ankle giving out and stuff like that, this was at a really hot time for Rob Van Dam. You know, the fans at ECW loved him, so it was a hard blow for him to really give up that belt. But eventually he did give up the belt. He comes back, but ECW is, at the time now, like I said, falling in bankruptcy, so the doors are soon to be closing. The doors ended up closing for ECW. Rob was on the last show, actually. Yeah, Rob was on the last official ECW show before WWE took ownership of it. So he was on that I think it was on TNT or something, but what was that? That's probably like, I want to say early 2000s. That's when the last official ECW show was. So I believe Rob was there. And they brought a couple of the ECW and WCW guys in for the Invasion angle in 2001. So in 2001, we have the Invasion angle, and Rob is being brought in for the ECW guys, but they're working with WCW guys. So it's ECW and WCW versus WWE. If you're a wrestling fan, then you know how that goes. We've been down that terrible. I don't want to say that bad, but it was bad storyline. So after the 2001 era, I mean not era, but after 2001, and the Invasion angle was over, Rob was slowly still building himself up in the WWE, by having outstanding matches and just being so athletically gifted that it's not even funny how athletically gifted Rob Van Dam is. Just even me as a kid back in 01, 02, being able to watch Rob Van Dam on television have great matches, ladder matches with Eddie Guerrero, which they showed highlights of, and while they were showing the highlights of Rob Van Dam versus Eddie Guerrero, at one point I thought that they were gonna show when the fan, there was a fan that ran in to the match and knocked Eddie Guerrero off of the ladder, and Eddie ended up punching the fan, and then security had to get him out, which was a legit thing. That wasn't a work. I thought they were gonna mention that, but they didn't. But they just showed highlights of the match, and that was a great time for Rob at that time. He was in that not top, but he was in that, like, working his way up. I guess you could say top mid card. Then yeah, I guess you could say top mid card, because he had the hardcore title, and not saying that the hardcore title meant a whole lot back then, but if you were somebody that had a title and you made a good connection with the fans, then that meant you were gonna be all right. And he was still doing his thing. This is early 01, 02. 02, I want to say 02 is when RVD, as far as his rise in the WWE, started. So I say 02 is when it really, like, started to go up, and then 03, 04. He had his runs, but he was always that mid-card guy who could go out there and put on a good show. He's had WrestleMania moments. I didn't even notice it myself. There's some of these Rob Van Dam matches I have to go back and look on, because he had a match that I didn't even know about with William Regal. I think that was at WrestleMania 18. For the IC title. So he's had not one but two WrestleMania moments, which I'll get to. But yeah, 02, 03, 04, Rob was just top mid card, but somebody who you was watching out for. Like, he's, if they do the right things, he'll be a champion soon. So I want to say his first world title match was against, as far as WWE goes, it was against Triple H. And around that time, he talked about, in the documentary, he talked about how, whether it be backstage politics or people that was, in management, writing, which I'm curious to see, like, or who really was trying to, like, not advocate as much, not advocate, but try to change RVD's character and try to make him a different type of style or way, because Rob wasn't feeling that. Rob didn't want to change who he was, and management just didn't see him to be a formidable champion against Triple H at the time. And Triple H at that time in the Ruthless Aggression era, oh man, there was no way he was taking that belt off of Triple H. You know, that at that point it was Triple H is literally beating everybody on the roster uh until like Mania and stuff happened, and maybe he would drop the strap. But yeah, at that time, even at Mania 19, WrestleMania 19, he didn't even drop the strap to Booker T. So uh I don't even, as a kid though, around that time I don't remember that feud as much. I did go back and watch that match not too long ago. So okay match, not bad at all. Um but I I really honestly I did not even remember that RVD had a feud with Triple H and was in title contention, because at that time it was just somebody who, to me, I just looked at and was like, yo, this is a good IC champ, hardcore champ, not to say that Rob didn't deserve a world title run at the time, but it just, to me, it wasn't his time then. So fast forward, let's say we're 06, 07. Around this time, Rob is still in the company. He's doing all right. Everything's straight, and he comes up with the idea to Vince, about bringing back ECW as a like a one-time pay-per-view type thing. And he brought it up to Vince and didn't think that he would really he would take it seriously. And Vince took it dead serious. Said, "Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It's something we can make money off of. So why not?" They end up doing it, and it's a success. It's a real good success. And thinking about the first ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view, it was, man, I think as far as like my top favorite pay-per-views of all time, ECW One Night Stand is probably in my top 10, honestly. um and unfortunately, Rob wasn't able to wrestle the first one. He did not get to wrestle the first ECW event. So, mind you, this is after ECW has it's closed its doors, and Vince owns it now. And this has been the first ECW show since what, '01 or something like that. So this meant a lot to a lot of the people who were on the roster back then and who were able to get a contract, because from my understanding, there was a lot of people that was on the roster back then, on ECW now, who weren't able to be in the best stable living conditions and stuff like that. So those paychecks and stuff that the WWE was able to give out for that one night kind of helped a lot of the people, and it put a lot of faces on wrestlers who were still on the independent scene. So it was a good thing that they did that. And fast forward after the pay-per-view, the Money in the Bank match happens at WrestleMania 22, and now Rob Van Dam is in line to winning that match. Rob Van Dam ends up winning the match, and now he's Mr. Money in the Bank. Around this time, RVD is, we getting something now. Like, RVD is looking like a real title contender at this time. And Cena was there. This is the time Cena's champ. You got Cena as a WWE champion. And the next ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view comes around. Now we're doing it again. Like they said, you thought it was good the first time. The second time, oh man. The second time was, I gotta go back and watch 1 and 2 again, to really give you a fair, honest review on what I think was a better pay per view. Um, but I do remember the second one being a lot different, a lot different. Yeah, I gotta go back. I definitely have to go back. Yeah, Kurt Angle was on this show, so shit, man, that's tough, man. That's a tough one to really go back and try to see which one was better. But anyway, Rob announces that he's gonna be cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase against John Cena for the WWE Championship at ECW One Night Stand. And the whole time I was watching the little build up package to that match, and when Rob announced it, I was just looking at Cena, and it's just like he does the same stupid ass look. Um, Whenever somebody tells him something so surprising, I guess it's just this weird look he does. It's just like I don't know. It's funny as shit to me. But if you ever want to go back and see what I'm talking about, watch as soon as he says ECW One Night Stand. Just watch Cena's reaction. It's just like, there's a million times I can show you he's done that, but it's just so funny to me. So he announces he's gonna cash it in at ECW One Night Stand, the second pay per view, I guess. Second time around. ECW One Night Stand 2. That's what we'll call it. Going into that, I might say the second one is better, because going into that match, honestly, man, as a kid, whew, man, I begged my mother to buy me this goddamn pay per view. I begged her so much to get this for me, and she did. Love you, ma. She bought that shit for me, and wow. This shit was crazy. The hostility in the air for Cena, was wild. Like, they did not want Cena to win that night, and I'm glad he didn't, because if Cena would have won that match against Rob Van Dam for the WWE Championship in ECW territory, oh yeah, security would have had to help Cena get the fuck up out of there ASAP, because that was a great match. And it just, kind of ended a little weird, but it's Cena, I think Edge might have came out and assisted RVD, which was, it was whatever, we still got the finish that we wanted. And Rob does it. Rob becomes the ECW and WWE champion, because the next night, I think after Raw, or during that night, they announced that ECW is gonna be a brand now. WWE has made ECW a third brand. That's what they're going with now. That's gonna be the third brand. So, the next night, I think ECW was on a Tuesday. So the next night after Raw, Paul Heyman gives Rob Van Dam the ECW World Title. So he's going to be starting off the newly launched ECW brand. And in the beginning, everything, this is where Rob always wanted to be as far as championship status goes. This is where you want to be as far as championship status goes in the company. He's at that echelon now. He's a WWE champion and a ECW champion. That is ECW world champion. That's something that he wasn't able to accomplish when he was working for ECW back in the 90s, early 90s and stuff, before they had to close their doors down. So this meant a lot to him. This meant a hell of a lot to him. And right as he was at the top, he fell down. He fell down pretty hard with this one. There was another ECW show, I think the next week. He was gonna go to ECW again back in Philly hometown, and him and Sabu were in a car, and they were on their way to the show, and I guess they were speeding, and they got pulled over. And as they got pulled over, the car smelled like marijuana. Anybody that knows RVD, then you know RVD likes to smoke weed. You know that's not a secret at all. But around then, back then, at that time, uh, especially I don't even know what state they were in when they got pulled over. Um, sound maybe might have been somewhere down south or some shit, but wherever they got pulled over, you know, especially now, marijuana back then wasn't looked at as freely as it is now. Um, and that that was the end. That was the end of his run. Um, they got pulled over, got arrested for possession of marijuana, and Rob Van Dam, I think the next week or the next night or something, he dropped the WWE Championship to Edge in a triple threat match against Cena. And then that night, the next night, he dropped the ECW World Title to the Big Show. Talk about a setback. Talk about a setback. That was hard. That was hard for Rob to have to start from the bottom and, you know, work your ass off to something that you truly love and believe in, which was wrestling. And, you know, give people a glimpse of how hard you worked and how much you really care about this business, and then to get at the top and fumble it like that is just, it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate because Rob was a guy who was always over with the fans and everybody liked him. It was just that happening at that time. He said it was bad. It was bad. And unfortunately, it was even more worse for all of the ECW guys because I think Sabu was just like, yeah, you know, it was tough because it was like, you know, some of them was just like, yeah, you guys think that this ECW guy is going to be the champ. Wait until he fucks up. He's going to fuck up. And it was like, you know, that right there just, it hurt the most because it was a bad fuck up for him. And it was a really bad one because, you know, he was right there. He was really right there. So, Rob is at a point where he's making a decision where he wants to, you know, leave the company and move on to do other things and work on the independent scene. So around 08, 09, I think. Yeah, 08, 09, or maybe, yeah, 08, 09, I believe. Contract ends. Rob ends up working in Japan for a little bit, which I gotta go back and see because I gotta see if Rob was in New Japan in 08, 09 or some shit like that. But 2010, 2011, and 2012, I think he works for TNA. Rob goes down to TNA, and they briefly touched about his TNA run. Nothing crazy, you know. I don't know why they didn't go. I mean, his TNA run wasn't nothing too special. I'll go back and try to see if it was, but I don't think it was anything too crazy. But he did become a world champ, so he was a TNA world champion over there. So that does mean something. He's tearing it up with Styles down there. So he was down there for a little bit, and then he made his return back to the WWE in 2013. And you know, he said he got to a point where he felt like there were a lot of people backstage who were a lot more enthusiastic on going out and actually wrestling and being amped about, you know, just competing, and he didn't feel that type of same energy, you know, for as far as his self goes. You know, he started to feel like, you know, it's just, I'm going out here to perform, and you know, I'm gonna give it my all. I'm gonna always make sure I give it my all, but it's just that passion for it is just kind of gone for him. So around that time, he just didn't want to he didn't want to go out and perform as much, and he said he was going through a lot of depression as far as him being in a situation where he was in a divorce and losing his father. It set him in a bad place. So RVD, oh excuse me, RVD is chill and laid back as he was, and cool, calm, collected as he was. He still faced some, some personal problems and issues that he had to go through himself to get him out of the type of situation, as far as like, being depressed and stuff like that, just dealing with his issues at the time took away a lot of the passion that he had towards wrestling. So around that time he just, wasn't in it, and he went out as a free agent. And as he was a free agent again, 2000 and I think 16, he said 15 or 16, he met, I forgot her name, man, that's tough, but he met his wife. I think her name's Jessie something. He met his wife, Jessie, and she gave him a different, different type of energy, different type of feeling, which is good. Rob found another type of happiness, and with him finding that type of happiness, he was able to, kind of get back on the wrestling scene again, but work a very light schedule, because at the age he is, I don't want to see Rob Van Dam on TV every week. He's a lot older now, so it's good to see that he's not trying to overwork his body. And with him meeting his new wife, he's been able to have a whole new resurgence in and just the way he feels, not in his wrestling career, but just the way he feels as a person, mentally, and just being happier now. And it brought him into a better place. And now, at this stage in his career, he is now a WWE Hall of Famer. He just got in the class of 2021. And Rob Van Dam, as a businessman now, is, he's in the marijuana business, in the CBD business. So he's in a better place now. And Rob Van Dam's career, if I can sum it up, man, is just someone who has had all of the potential in the world, made it there, took a stop, had a pump on the brakes, but overall, somebody who I could honestly say has had a Hall of Fame career as far as wrestling goes, and just his history of being inside the business. First ballot WWE Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. Even though the Hall of Fame is low-key a joke now, it's still good to see that we have people like Rob Van Dam, who, like they said at the end of the documentary, are not left on. There's dudes who should be in the Hall of Fame and they're not. And like I said, you can't really take the Hall of Fame seriously, but there's dudes like Rob Van Dam who definitely should be in there regardless. So yeah, to sum it up, like I said, it's a very good documentary. I do recommend people watching it. WWE Icons. Make sure y'all check out my gaming channel. I got some wrestling content on there. I probably might even do a couple matches with RVD, or run a storyline, or something on Here Comes the Pain, or something with Rob Van Dam, because as a kid, like I said before in the beginning, as a kid, grew up watching Rob Van Dam. One of my favorites, Mr. RVD, Mr. Monday Night, the whole fucking show, the whole effing show. Rob Van Dam documentary. Like I said, go check it out if you haven't seen it. WWE Icons. It's been your boy. Been talking for a grip. Need some more water in it bit. But I'm out of here. Peace.